I'm very happy to be here at JFocus 2021 speaking about Samman technical coaching. My name is Emily Bache. I'm a technical agile coach with Pro Agile, based in Gothenburg, and my background is as a software developer, although today I mostly work as a coach. And I've just recently published a book last month, Technical Agile Coaching with the Samman Method, and that's mainly what I'm going to speak about today. Please get in touch with me via Twitter or email if you'd like to. I'd love to hear from you. Now I've got this picture here, which is kind of characterising some of the problems I see when I'm out working as a consultant, technical problems. So the first problem they have here is the code is so bad, they want to take a long break and rewrite it. Perhaps you recognise that problem. Sometimes the code is really bad. The next problem that I've highlighted here is this problem: I spend all my time fixing bugs. That can get a bit boring. And then this third problem here is, well, it's 90% done, and it will be done by the deadline, honest, and then of course the deadline gets missed and it's still 90% done. These are the kind of problems that I hear about when I'm out consulting. So a lot of my motivation with the Samman technical coaching is to try and address these kind of problems, and also to take those teams to a better place. And I want to highlight this research because it's got packed full of information about what that better place looks like. And it's many years of research. The authors are very well respected. Jez Humble and Jean Kim have written a lot of books in the DevOps space. Nicole Forsgren has a PhD in statistics, the lead author of this research. Background in ops as well. So the basic research question they're asking in this is, well, what practices and behaviours cause software development organisations to be successful? And they highlight a lot of information about what actually works, what are the best companies doing. And I find this really interesting, of course. And one of the big findings of their research is that software today is delivered by teams. It's not individuals working in their own little room by themselves, producing big commercially successful software. No, it's teams. A lot of people need to collaborate in order for software to come out. And those teams are cross-functional, they're accountable, they're empowered, and they're self-organising. And there's all these cultural aspects to how you organise those teams and process aspects, and there's lots to it. There's also very much a technical side to it, how those software developers actually behave in the code. And that's the part that I'm really focusing on in the Samman coaching method. So this is a method for working with software development teams to help them to improve the way we write software. And I've named it Samman so that you can Google it and you can find out more information. And this word means together, because the basis of this coaching method basically is getting teams to work together more effectively. So just going back to this anecdote situations here that I mentioned earlier, the kind of practices you need to address these kind of problems. I mean, for the problem here with we want to rewrite, I think instead of that rewrite, perhaps if you invested in some automated tests and improved the way you iteratively and incrementally improve your design, that might get you a long way. This thing with bugs, it might really help if you learnt to refactor safely so you could improve your design and get rid of those bugs. And of course, you need the safety net of good automated tests again. And then this thing of not being able to meet deadlines, it's often a question of learning better collaboration skills around continuous integration, so you've always got something that's shippable, but also about iterative and incremental design, breaking a large design change into small steps, or just basically redesigning regularly so that you always have a good design, and it's easy to add new features. And all of these technical practices basically rely on the whole team agreeing on how to use these practices and doing them effectively. So that's also an important part. It's not just learning these techniques, it's learning them as a team. So just to summarise on one slide, what the Samman technical coaching is trying to improve the team's practices in all of these areas. And we're trying to do it with the whole team together. Teamwork as I mentioned before, is really important. This is also from that Accelerate research and previous research at Google about what makes teams effective and productive and performing. And top of the list of what they found was the most important factor was this psychological safety, where team members feel safe to take risks and to be vulnerable in front of one another. And then there's a whole bunch of other factors that they also identified going down, and you should definitely take a look at the research and learn more about that. But this is really interesting. It backs up this whole theory basically that software is delivered by teams, and the primary factor influencing a team's performance is not the individuals in that team and how competent they are, it's how well they work together as a team. So the Samman coaching method must support teams. Then there's test-driven development. Now we've hopped down to a really, really technical practice. This is the heart of an agile iterative method. And it's also identified in the Accelerate research as one of the factors contributing to success. And in my experience, this is a technique which a lot of developers try and then find it difficult and slows them down a bit, so they give up. And they never get to that point where they're really productive with it. So this is also something that we're trying to teach in the Samman method. Then I wanted to mention trunk-based development and continuous integration, which is very closely related practice. This is the idea that software is built by teams, so what counts actually is what the team has produced together on a shared branch, that is the one we released from. So that learning to slice your work into small pieces so you can sync it with your colleagues often is a skill that's really important to learn. And then there's the piece here about, well, we're doing agile methods here. This is a picture of Scrum, but it could be any agile method. All of them have this property that we are iteratively and incrementally producing our software. Regularly there's this increment coming out that is an improvement on the previous one, and that we accept feedback as input to our planning process for what we're going to build next. And for this to work, you need all this process there to do your planning and all that, but you also need technical, iterative and incremental engineering practices. And all of that doesn't just come naturally. It's not kind of, oh yeah, it's just common sense. Actually, no, you really have to learn some of this stuff. And I like to make this analogy with skiing. I've got a picture here of two different people skiing. One of them is a beginner. She's looking at her feet. And she's got her legs really wide spaced in this stable configuration called snowplow. Allows you to go down a gentle slope in a controlled way, and it's what beginners learn first, but even experienced skiers still use this technique. The other skier is doing downhill skiing with the parallel skis, parallel turns, and that is a different technique for skiing. Both techniques get you down a slope. The parallel turns get you down a steeper slope faster and with good control. But the transition from one technique to the other for a beginner takes some time, actually, because it's a completely different way of balancing, and you need often some lessons and a lot of practice and coaching to make that transition. And when you're learning it, it's slower than what you can already do with snowplow. So this is the analogy I'm making with learning test-driven development and all these other agile technical engineering practices. While you're learning them, you have to slow down. You have to practice on simple problems while you get the idea, and then you need gradually to attempt more difficult problems, and it really helps to have a coach or a teacher. So that's the kind of, just learning the basic techniques is a teaching thing. So the first part of the Samman method is the learning hour. So this is where you get the whole team together. We're going to spend an hour learning new techniques, practicing on exercises, and the coach is going to act as teacher and make it fun, like a skiing lesson. But of course, just being able to do the beginner slopes isn't enough. You need to be able to use your techniques in varying conditions. And your production code may not be that smooth, beautifully groomed slope, which I'm really looking forward to getting out onto soon. Your production code may look more like this kind of bumpy, busy slope, and you might need a coach or a mentor or somebody to take you down that slope with them a few times before you feel confident to use your new techniques on that yourself. And that's the other part of the Samman coaching method, which is the ensemble working. This is where we get the whole team together. We're working in the production code on a realistic task. We are going to practice using the techniques on this realistic task rather than actually completing the task, although of course we would like to complete it too. But this means that the coach is there with the team, supporting them as they try and use the new techniques in a realistic setting. And the hope is, of course, when they've done that a few times with the coach, they'll be able to do it themselves later without the coach. Now, I should say something about ensemble working. I've just kind of thrown that in there. It's also known as mob programming, and it's a whole team approach to writing software. And Woody Zull is the main discoverer of this technique, and I learnt it from him and others near him. And it's much bigger than the Samman coaching method. It's can be used in a lot of circumstances, but I'm using it in the Samman coaching method to help teams to use their technical practices. So I'm coaching the behaviours of the people in the team, working with the team, as a technical agile coach. So I want to talk a bit more now about what it is I actually do, and other coaches like me, of course. I'm not the only one. This is the Agile Coaching Competency framework that comes from the Agile Coaching Institute, and this predates Samman coaching. It's been around for a long time, but I really like it as a model of what Agile coaches do. Now, the first thing there at the top is that you have, as a coach, you have this background as an Agile or Lean practitioner. You've done it yourself. You didn't just become a coach. You've actually had experience of these methods yourself. Then at the bottom, you've got the three specialising areas that a coach might have. And I've been talking a lot about technical areas. That's me, the technical mastery as a coach. I have lots of colleagues at Pro Agile who specialise in that, and also the other two specialisations. So understanding the business, how to manage a product, transformation, how to manage a transition, a transformation, introducing agile processes. So most coaches will specialise in one of those, perhaps have a foot in a second one. But very basically you don't get people who can do all three. So for an organisation who is wanting to become more agile and bringing in coaches, you need to probably bring in various people with backgrounds in these different mastery areas. So the Samman method is a method for doing that technical coaching. But it's still coaching. It's using these four things at the sides: the teaching, the mentoring, professional coaching, and facilitating. Those are the way a coach behaves, the techniques they use as they're coaching. So I'm going to talk a bit more about those four things and how they apply to me as a very technical coach. So teaching. Now, maybe this is fairly understandable what a teacher does. And I've got a couple of examples of from the learning hours that I've led. Like I like to use flip charts and make them colourful, and use sticky notes so everyone's getting involved. And we're learning about TDD, and then we do an exercise where we're actually doing TDD in some real code. And then we talk about how it went and analyse the TDD cycles and that kind of thing. And I've got learning hours on all kinds of topics, technical topics around automated testing and refactoring and all this stuff. I like teaching. And it has to be fun for people to learn. It's not just a question of me standing at the front telling them stuff. For it to really stick, you need to make it experiential. You need to relate it to what people already know and make it hands-on. So this book by Sharon Bowman and the other books that she's written are very good sources of inspiration. She's not technical, she's not writing about code at all, but she's writing about making teaching effective and fun. So I really take a lot of inspiration from that, and I make a lot of my teaching materials freely available with a Creative Commons license so that other people can start to use them and build on them. So teaching is a part of the coaching that I really like. Then there's mentoring. Now, mentoring is in a way similar to teaching in that you're trying to get people to go in a particular direction, to learn to do new things. But with teaching, I kind of, you're using exercises. With mentoring, here the problem comes from the people being mentored. So at the start of the ensemble working sessions, the team will come with a realistic task they want to work on. And this is a picture of a whiteboard sketch of a scenario that we were going to code. This was the new feature they needed to add. It was something to do with time quotas. I can't quite remember the details now. It's a while back. But this was the scenario that we were going to implement, and I mentored this team through, okay, we've got this whiteboard sketch of what we want to achieve. We all have a shared understanding of what the code needs to do when we've finished. Let's encode that in a component test, automated component test, that exercises this business rule and fails because we haven't written the functionality yet. And then I mentor them through all the steps of double loop test-driven development, from the component test down to the unit tests, writing several unit tests until we think the thing is working. And the component test eventually it did take us a while, but we got this component test passing. And then we'd gone through the whole process with me really supporting and mentoring them through it in their code for doing applying these technical practices. So that was an example of when I did some mentoring. Then I wanted to mention facilitating. Now, when you're working in an ensemble with a group of programmers, then you need to help people to follow the roles. For ensemble programming to work, there are roles, you rotate the roles, there are specific behaviours that you want to encourage, others you want to discourage. So you're facilitating that, just the collaboration. And then this is a picture of a retrospective that we did just at the end of an ensemble session, where I just write up these keywords: liked, learned, lacked. This was the particular format I used for this retrospective, and people wrote sticky notes for all of the observations that they'd made during the session about things that they liked, things they learned, things that didn't quite work the way they'd hoped, so that we could, and I facilitated that as a forum for the team to raise what they had learned and what they'd seen and improve the way they worked together. So facilitation is all about helping people to collaborate, and you're actually fairly neutral about the outcomes that they're trying to achieve, more than that they should be collaborating well. And then the fourth coaching technique is, by the literature here, it's called professional coaching. This is to distinguish it from just general coaching, because professional coaching is about when the answers are within the person or the team you're coaching. They know what it is they're trying to achieve, and they've got all the tools they need to get there. You are supporting them in reaching their goal, and you're asking the right questions and prompting them at the right moment to make sure that they fulfill their potential. So this is a picture of a UML diagram, and this was a team I was working with recently, and they were very skilled already with a lot of agile techniques, and I felt that they had all the skills they needed actually to complete the task they'd chosen to work on, and I was really just supporting them with prompts and questions most of the time. There's a bit of mentoring here and there, but mostly they were doing it, and I was just prompting them to do it. So I should explain the UML diagram. This was the team lead came and said, right, we've got all of these 5 classes that are there at the top of the diagram that aren't in other packages. Those were all together in the same file. And he came and said, right, we need to refactor this. This is an area of functionality where we have problems and bugs, and we need to get control of it. So I think, having drawn this diagram, which we did collaboratively together, we could split these into 2 different files like this. These, you can see from the dependencies that this is the easiest way to separate them. So I was just there asking the right questions, saying, have you set up your feedback cycle with some tests here? Yes, we have fast tests, good. Have you committed recently? Are we taking small steps? How could you do this without breaking the compilation? Do you expect the test to pass now? Reminding them to run the tests, that kind of thing. So this is the professional coaching, and that's a real luxury when you get to do that, because you know that the team actually is doing really well. And you just have to prompt them. So I mentioned before, of course, that this kind of coaching, I was doing it face-to-face, locally, with the people for some time. And then, of course, since March, I've been doing it all remotely. And one of these pictures is of a team I work with in person, and the other one is, this is actually a bunch of people who we're all coaches, basically, or experienced developers, and we get together once a week to do some ensemble working together on some open source projects. But it's a picture of what it's like ensemble working. It works well in person, it works well remotely. There are pros and cons of both. And of course, I've adapted all of my teaching methods to work remotely as well. And these days, I think it's working pretty well. I'm not sure that being remote is a big problem anymore. Everyone's got the idea, and it's working quite well. So if I could just summarise what Samman Technical Coaching consists of, we're working with the whole team. Each coaching day for that team is 2 hours of ensemble programming in their production code and 1 learning hour. So each coaching day for the team is 3 hours with a short gap in between. And the coach will be with that team for 10 coaching days in a block, and either over 2 or 3 weeks. So there might be a few days that are not coaching days in a 3-week period. And then the coach goes away and the team works with the new techniques without the coach being present. And of course, between the ensemble working and the learning hours, the other half of the day they're working on their normal tasks. And how they spend that time is totally up to the team. So as a coach, you can coach 2 teams each day, in the morning and the afternoon. I tried doing 3 for a while. It was a little bit stressful doing 3 with a shared learning hour, all 3 teams coming to the same learning hour. It kind of worked, but I prefer doing 2. I can really tailor it much better actually for the team. So I mentioned also that there's these breaks between the coaching blocks. So here I've just got a vague schematic of, for each team they have a 3-week block, a 3-week 10-day coaching block, and then the coach goes away and they have like 6 weeks or so before the coach comes back for another block. And one coach could maybe have 6 teams in rotation. That's kind of the ambition. I have to say that I haven't quite achieved that yet, but I'm coaching lots of different teams, and there is definitely a gap. And the gap is important. It's definitely a part of the method, because the teams need some time by themselves to see if they can apply these techniques. Then, before the team coaching begins, I mentioned it vaguely on that previous diagram, that we have a kickoff. Each team is unique, so before we jump in with the full deal of 10 days of coaching, I like to have a couple of workshops to really get to know the team, to make sure that we're all on board with what's going to happen. So the first workshop is really about the coach learning about the challenges that particular team faces. And then the next workshop is about, well, okay, given those are the problems we face, how about these coaching topics? And can we come up with agreed goals and topics for the coaching? So when the team goes into the first block of coaching, hopefully they have a good idea about what it's going to involve and what they're going to learn and what they hope to get out of it. And when I started doing these workshops, it really improved the way the coaching went. So I definitely will continue doing that. It's a part of the method. So just to summarise, the goals of the Samman coaching method are to help teams and organisations improve their technical practices. We're going to learn new skills with the team, and really I just want to normalise that. It's something that teams need to do continually to improve the way they work together and to learn new techniques and skills. And then of course the whole thing would be totally pointless if they stop doing it the minute the coach leaves. So I'm really trying to explain stuff and get people to engage with stuff in a way that means that they're going to want to continue after I've gone, and they'll be able to continue with the new techniques after the coach has gone. Now, I have tried to follow up with the teams I've coached about the progress they've made. I'm sure that this is an area that I could be better at, but the simplest thing really is just to ask the teams, what do they think? What did they learn? So this is a snippet from one of the surveys I've done of people who've been coached, asking them about what outcomes they've seen, a while after the coaching. And we're seeing people talking about better teamwork, more likely to write unit tests, more likely to work in small increments, committing more often, more likely to improve the design and refactor safely, more likely to do test-driven development, and more likely to design better test cases. So these are all outcomes that I've suggested to them they might have, and they've agreed with me. So that's a good thing. And of course, I'm sure there is a lot more that could be done here about the kind of outcomes I'm expecting to see. Can we measure those directly? Can we see that there are more test cases being written? Can we see that they're committing more often in smaller increments? And these are things that you can measure from the version control system and give that as feedbacks to the team about their progress. I wouldn't want to use them as targets, but I would want to give that as feedback to teams. So this is an area that I'm sure there'll be more work done on this and the Samman coaching method soon. So if you'd like to find out more about this, I've got this book, as I mentioned, that was published last month, and you can get a print copy on Lulu and the electronic copy on LeanPub. And I think the world needs more technical agile coaches. So if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I could do technical coaching, that would be great. Get in touch. Maybe we can help each other. There needs to be more technical agile coaches in this world. I believe that this is one of the things holding back software development organisations in Sweden and in the world, is not having enough good technical practices being used and not having enough people out there able to teach and encourage and help teams to adopt those practices. So that's why I wrote this book, basically, to try and encourage other people to start doing technical coaching and to give them a method, a concrete method for how to do it and how to get started. So just to summarise everything I've said, software today is built by cross-functional empowered teams. There's a lot of technical problems with agile development, and the solution to that is technical practices and things like test-driven development. And the way you learn these kind of skills is through teaching. That's why we have the learning hours, which is the first main component of the Samman technical coaching method. And then the second main part is the ensemble working, where we apply those techniques in the production code in the normal situation of that team. And then if this appeals to you, perhaps you should consider becoming a coach. So thank you so much for coming to this presentation. I hope you have learnt something about Samman technical coaching, and please put some questions in the Q&A and I'll do my best to answer you. Thank you.